There's a form HR fills out after almost every conversation you have with them. You'll never see it. Most people don't even know it exists. And the words on it are never the words you actually said. They're a translation. And that translation is what actually gets read later. If you've ever walked out of an HR meeting thinking, okay, that went well, they get it now, this video is going to show you why that feeling means almost nothing. Because HR isn't recording your side of the story. They're producing a neutral, third-person version of it that strips out everything that made it personal, and that stripped-down version is the only one anyone reads 6 months from now. My name is Amar, and I talk about the parts of your job nobody sits you down and explains. If this is your first time here, subscribe, because most of what happens at work isn't about talent. It's about systems. And once you see the system, you can't unsee it. Let's get into it. Before the list, here's the mechanism you need to actually absorb. Whatever you say gets rewritten into case language. Phrases like employee expressed concern regarding team dynamics, or employee cited workload as a factor. That version has no tone, no context, no relationship history, just a flat sentence that can mean almost anything later. The person reading that file in a year won't know you were venting after a brutal week. They'll just see the sentence, and they'll decide what it means without you in the room. Let me tell you about Alex. He's 31, works in logistics, 4 years at the same company, the kind of employee who shows up early and doesn't complain in front of people. A new manager reorganized his team 8 months ago and handed his biggest account to someone with half his experience. Alex didn't blow up. He booked 15 minutes with HR and calmly gave them context, the reorg, the account handoff, how 4 years of results suddenly didn't seem to matter. The HR rep thanked him for being so open. Alex walked out feeling like someone official finally knew what was going on. 14 months later, the company announced a restructuring round. Alex wasn't targeted for performance. He was flagged during a review of employee files as someone who'd previously raised concerns about organizational change. And that single line, translated from a 15-minute conversation he'd mostly forgotten about, was enough to land him on a list of people considered less adaptable to future reorgs. Nobody told him that's why. He found out from a friend still inside HR months later. Alex had no idea that one conversation had been sitting in a file, waiting for a moment exactly like this one. Here are 10 things you should never say to HR, and why each one can quietly work against you, even when it feels like the responsible thing to say. Number 1, can we keep this between us? You're asking for privacy. What you're actually doing is putting on record that you wanted this hidden. And HR often can't legally promise confidentiality anyway, especially once certain topics come up. So now there's a note that you asked to keep something quiet. And later, that reads as, employee was aware this was serious enough to conceal. Say this instead. How is this typically documented, and who has access to it? Same instinct, but now you're getting information instead of creating a liability. Number 2, everyone knows this is happening. You mean it as backup. Proof you're not imagining things. HR hears something different, that there's a wider pool of people they now have to interview. Whether you wanted that or not, you've just triggered a broader investigation that pulls in coworkers who never agreed to be part of this, and now you're the reason their names are in a file too. Say this instead. I can speak to what I've personally experienced, and let HR ask if they want more. Number 3, I don't want to make this a big deal. You're trying to sound reasonable. What HR hears is permission to do nothing. Your own words become the reason the file gets closed with no action, and employee stated it wasn't a major concern becomes the official summary. Say this instead. This matters enough that I wanted to flag it properly. Number 4, my review is coming up, so I wanted to mention this now. You think you're just giving useful timing. HR reads it as strategy, a complaint filed right before a decision that benefits you, which makes the complaint look tactical instead of genuine, even if it's completely real. Say this instead, and leave your review out of it entirely. I wanted to raise this as soon as it happened, which is why I'm here now. Number 5. I probably shouldn't even bring this up, but that little preface feels polite. It actually hands HR a built-in reason to discount whatever comes next. You've discredited yourself before you've said a single fact. Drop the disclaimer entirely and just say the thing plainly. Number 6. I'm sure some of this is on me too. You say it to sound fair, to show you're not just pointing fingers. HR hears an admission. Your own self-criticism gets lifted straight into the file as your assessment of the situation, and it's used later to argue the problem was mutual, even when it wasn't. Fairness is not the same as confession. Say this instead. Here's exactly what happened on my end, and here's what I observed from theirs. Number 7. This has been going on for a while now. Vague timelines feel true because they are true, but HR can't act on a feeling of duration. Without specific dates, the file reads as unsubstantiated, and unsubstantiated is the easiest thing to quietly close. Say this instead, with the dates ready. This started on this date, and here are 3 more times it's happened since. Number 8. This kind of thing happens everywhere. I know, you're trying to sound easygoing, not dramatic. What lands in the file is, employee described this as normal for the industry, and that one line becomes the justification for doing nothing because you basically told them not to bother. Say this instead. I understand this happens elsewhere, but I'd still like it addressed here. Number 9. I'm probably the only one who feels this way. The moment you isolate yourself as the sole complainant, the issue stops being systemic in HR's eyes and becomes a personality conflict, the category least likely to trigger real change. Say this instead. I'd like to know if this is something others have raised too. Number 10. I know you have to stay neutral. I just wanted to loop you in. You're trying to be considerate, showing you don't expect them to fight for you. What you've actually done is put in writing that you understood, going in, that HR wasn't going to advocate on your behalf, which is exactly the sentence they'll point to later if you ever ask why nothing was done. If you want help, say so specifically, out loud, in the room. Do you see what all 10 of these have in common? None of them are lies. None are unreasonable. They're just honest sentences said without any thought for how they get translated once they leave the room. That's not a flaw in you. Nobody sits new employees down and explains that the version of you that ends up in a file is written by someone else, in someone else's words. So here's what to do instead. 1. Send yourself a short written summary of what you said within 24 hours, so your own time-stamped version exists somewhere that isn't their file. 2. Before you leave the meeting, ask directly, what happens to this next and who sees it? Most people never ask, and the answer changes how carefully you should be speaking. 3. Say every sentence as if it might get read back to you in 6 months, because sometimes it will be. Alex didn't do any of that. He went in trusting the room, treating a workplace conversation like a personal one. He wasn't wrong about what was happening to him. He just never thought about who'd be reading a summary of it a year later, with no memory of the 15 minutes it came from. The gap between what Alex meant and what ended up in his file is the whole story. Most people don't lose ground at work because of what they actually said. They lose it because of what that got turned into, without them in the room to correct it. Alex was good at his job. He'd been there 4 years. He gave the company everything, and a 15-minute conversation he barely remembered outlived all of it. Now you know how that translation works, and knowing it is the whole point of this video. Tell me in the comments, has something you said at work ever come back around in a way you didn't expect? I read every comment. If you know someone who's about to walk into that office thinking it's neutral ground, send them this first. Subscribe if you want to keep seeing how the systems at work actually operate. I'm Amar. I'll see you in the next one.